Okay, so today on Whiskey Whereabouts, we're going to be tasting Springbank 10-year. Again, this is a whiskey in a bottle, this specific bottle, that I reviewed about 3 months ago as I record this today. And the thing about this very special whiskey that we talked about on the original review was that it needs to breathe a little bit to achieve its sort of optimal potential. And what people recommend is to have a little bit out of the bottle, get the level below the shoulders here, let it sit for a couple of months interacting with the air. As you can see, my bottle is well below the shoulders. This has been a very popular bottle among guests, and I said during that review that I would come back after a couple of months. It's been 3 months. I did not add any gas to this bottle, so I talked a lot about what makes Springbank special, how in demand this whiskey is, and the price, and a lot of the details on my last video. So check that out if you are interested and haven't seen that yet. Today I'm going to go straight into the tasting. What I'm going to do is just see, how it compares to where we left off before. There's a lot of layers here, and the thing that's sort of primary is a sweetness. It's a real bourbon casky type of sweetness. It's a butterscotch. It's a vanilla, maybe a little honey, and underneath that comes some fruit. We'll get into it, but I remember it being very tropical on the first pour, on the first nose before. And there's some element of that here. Peaches and cream element, kind of sweet, like a fake, like a candy, like a peach flavor. Meaning kind of like just like more candied, more sweeter than a genuine sort of peach fruit. Not really tropical. That brassy kind of metallic polish is still there, and it's like a little sort of cloud hanging over that wet garden earth. Very little signs of the sherry, even though this is majority, 60% sherry matured in this batting. Very little smokiness. This is a moderately peated whiskey. And if you look for it really, maybe some orange sweetness, but I'm getting more at the bottom, a sharper kind of fruit. Banana lime maybe a little bit of tropical, maybe a little bit of lime. Not really traditional sherry flavors, but complex, inviting, and a little sweeter than I remember. And again, so well balanced. This is the thing about this whiskey. There's a lot of different flavors going on, and this one is tremendously well balanced. Honestly, not a tremendous amount has changed here. In comes that sort of charcoaly element, a little lively on the palate that really is more noticeable on the finish. Sort of a roundness, maybe a sweet red candy, and a caramel, sort of sweet, butterscotchy in that neighborhood, sort of on the palate. Little cinnamon spice. Little bit of a brown sugar, like a brown sugar-based simple syrup that is bringing in the sherry flavors. Very nice on the finish. You get a wave of the sort of that little bit of pepper, but it's really kind of and it stays with you, kind of this like charcoal, lively pepper that's kind of mixed up in the sweeter elements that are in the foreground on that finish. Now, I have some notes to remind myself. Last time, banana, slightly tropical, peachy, garden, earthy, sort of a butterscotch, honey, sweet, brassy metal polish. It's more of a toffee, sweet orange, sweet citrus is right down the middle of your tongue, tannic bitterness. And then I let it sit for more than half an hour, try to accelerate this sort of breathing process to try to get closer to this experience when I poured it fresh on my first review. And with the air, more of the sweet sort of stickiness. It's a lot of butterscotch now, like a peach flavored candy. It's more sugary now. It's like a red fruit, much more so than tropical, just a little stickier, saltier. The tropical fruits and the earthiness, the funkiness, that's receded. Ping of that bitter tannic, it's still there, but it's more peppery. It's more lively. What I have here has not changed dramatically from that experience of pouring it and letting it sit for a little bit of time, more than you would normally let a dram sit. It was at least 35 minutes, probably longer when I did it that first time. And this experience here, so similar to what I was able to achieve by airing it out. So I would say, yes, this bottle poured is a step up from the sort of neck pour or that sort of first sort of pour fresh when you unseal this bottle. The rumors are true. Letting it air out a little bit has helped it. I cheated and I just let my dram air out for a while, and it got close to approximating this. What I would say, so having it sit the way that this one has, it's just delicious. It's just so satisfying. You want to go to the next sip. It's incredibly drinkable and sippable. I do remember one of the notes that I had was that there was this sort of tannic, bitter note down the center of your palate, especially on the fresh pour. And it's there. There is a little bitterness, but it is so buried in the mix now, and it just sort of seems like an extension of that sort of lively, sort of charcoaly, ghost of the peat on the palate. It's even more balanced than it was before. That being kind of that, and that sort of brassy metallic note were the sort of sharpest notes. They were still in check. They were still balanced the first time I had this, very, very fresh in the bottle. And now it's there. It's blended together. It never gets treacly sweet. The sweetness never takes over. There's still the complexity, the balance. This thing was already incredibly well balanced, and letting it sit has really just softened anything that you might think is a hard edge without it going away. But I will say, letting it sit out again for a little bit, let it sit out for half an hour, 45 minutes when you first get your hands on a new bottle of this. Then go in, and you will be very close to this. So I am going to hit it with a little water, because you never know. Just a little bit. It's not that much in this glass. Just to see if anything strange occurs. And what I'm getting is a little bit more of that earthy note rather than the sweet on the nose. And like that lime. So a little bit more earthy, a little bit more citrus, maybe tropical, a little less of the big sort of sweeter, sort of bourbon-y cask notes. Almost no sherry notes. It's very nice with the water. It doesn't need it. I don't really think there was anything to adjust with the water. It's certainly drinkable with a little bit of water, but it's not necessary. And honestly, it's not having a huge impact other than taking back a little bit of this sort of sticky, sort of sweet, and letting some of those other flavors be featured. It does feel lighter. It doesn't have the same mouthfeel with just that tiny bit of water, but it's still pretty fantastic. I think I prefer it at the full strength, having had the air interact with it. It's bigger, it's rounder, it's more satisfying. It makes you kind of want to go in for the next one a little bit more, but these other elements are absolutely there. The sort of peaty charcoal element is there toward the end. I would say that that sort of metallic element, that brassiness, has been kind of washed away by the water. But overall, I would say that the way to experience this is the same thing we talked about on my first video. Let it sit for a little bit in the glass. Let your bottle sit. Don't worry about it interacting with the air, at least for this much time. After this, I can't vouch for it, but 3 months in with a lot of air in the bottle has just kind of let this thing really feel like it's come into its own. And I wonder, this brings up a question, I wonder if this effect is specific to the 10-year, or if this is just a Springbank thing. So we're gonna have to try the same process again. Coming soon to the channel, we're gonna taste the Springbank 15-year. Make sure you subscribe. Use this button right here so you don't miss when I follow up with the Springbank 15-year video.